Remember when I bought a horrible, filthy smoker's car last year? Well, there's a lot of things we can improve, so let's get started and make it a whole lot better.
Ah yes, the beating heart of this little Nugget. I must say the engine is looking far cleaner than when I first bought the car. Not many people watched the first video, so I'd strongly suggest checking it out if you have the time. The ignition leads don't look all that good, so it's time to replace them. Old leads do have a chance of simply breaking, so it's a good idea to have a new set on hand when you remove your spark plugs. The plugs that are in here, I have no idea when they were last changed. My father thought it would be much easier to get access to the middle spark plugs with the air intake removed. The next ignition lead didn't come out as easy. You're supposed to grip the end and twist. A pair of pliers made this far easier, and if I was to break the lead, it wouldn't matter since I do have a new set standing by. Pliers also help break the last one free. You'd really struggle to get access to this without the intake pipe removed. The old spark plugs were now exposed, so I carefully removed them. Thankfully, they did come out without much hassle. I've seen worse, but they definitely warranted replacement, all showing similar signs of wear. In go the new plugs. I first did them up as tight as I could by hand, then applied half a turn or so with a socket wrench. The fun had only just started. The new ignition leads were pretty much the right length, and I was sure to put them in the correct firing order. They sat neatly with the help of this little clip, which was thankfully still intact. Do the new plugs and leads work? It sure seems like it. It'll run a bit better with the proper air intake connected, I think. Damaged and worn ignition leads can lead to increased electrical resistance, misfires, and bad fuel economy. There is still an obvious exhaust leak at the front of the engine. We will fix that later in the video, but now for something more important. New hubcaps. Finding 13-inch hubcaps is becoming harder and harder as time goes on. These ones, only 33 Australian dollars including delivery, which was a bargain. I went for the ones that looked the least tacky, at least to me, but yeah, they are a bit boring, but any hubcaps are going to look better than the no hubcaps that were previously on it. Take care when slapping them on. I actually cracked the rear right one I put on in this shot. Now that's a huge improvement, a far more respectable looking car now. Oh yeah, that's one fine looking Nugget if I've ever seen one. I mean, it's still one of the worst cars ever made, but we've got a few more improvements to make. It does struggle a bit with highway driving. Take a listen to it going up a steep incline. It has to drop to the second gear. Remember, this thing only has 3 gears. It also has a tendency to intermittently vibrate when at high speed, perhaps caused by the front brake rotors. The front wheel bearings at the very least seemed fine. Yes, this very cheaply made car has wheel bolts that come off, not just a set of nuts. The rotors look okay, but it's almost impossible to tell if they're warped just by looking at them. A vibration issue could also be caused by the calipers becoming seized, not releasing properly, and I learnt a lot by watching my father take this apart. I don't have much experience with car brakes personally. The caliper pin didn't want to move all that freely. This brake assembly is also missing one of the alignment pins for some reason, which may be part of the issue, and I'll have to find a replacement. Lubricating the sliding pin will hopefully get it moving a bit more freely. This issue was likely caused by the car sitting for a very long time before I purchased it. Well, it's definitely sliding very nicely now. Now it can go back together. I'm now on a mission to find a new alignment pin. Plus, we'll put on a new set of front brake rotors as well. The driver's side brake assembly was also missing a piece of wire that holds the alignment pins in place, so the last one could have just fallen out. The pins have a small hole which the wire can be pushed through. Turning it around gives us a better look. For now, we're just going to put a random piece of wire through to stop the brake pads from literally falling out. The steering wheel is so much easier to turn without the weight of the car resting on the tires. The next stop in our adventure will take us to a magical place where cars from all makes and models come to rest. That's right, it's U-Pullet time. Will we find the cars we're looking for? As I quickly found out, the Ford Festiva is actually one of the most common Fords in the Elizabeth U-Pullet location. This really is where these cheap, Korean-made buzz boxes come to die. It appears as if we won't have any trouble finding the alignment pins we were missing, so I could afford to be picky and grab a few decent ones. As long as they're straight, that's really all that matters honestly. I was also sure to check that they were the same through all the different models and years, mine being the exact same model from 1999 as the white one I saw here. A few of the other ones I'd looked at were seized in place, but these ones do appear to budge without much effort. This brake assembly also has the piece of wire that holds both pins in place, so I was sure to grab that as well. I now have an adequate selection of pins to choose from. I was also able to find a decent sun visor to replace the absolutely destroyed one in my Festiva. This trip was a good reminder not to forget a pair of gloves. If you have a Festiva of your own, the Elizabeth U-Pullet is a great place to try your luck. Due to their lightweight, it's easy to jack these cars up, but you should never solely rely on a trolley jack. Some stands are definitely recommended. The new hubcaps have also been a great addition to the car. They were not going to fall off, that's for sure. And since filming this video, I actually bought my own impact wrench, which will be great for taking off wheels with ease. The small, fairly common tyre size means replacements will be quite affordable. And at a glance, once again, the brake rotors don't look horrible. My father said it's worth double checking that the new pair do indeed match in terms of thickness. If the brake rotors retaining screws don't come off easily, just give them a hit. This seemed to get them out. The piece of wire we temporarily put in to hold the remaining pit in place was still there. That's quite a relief. And the brake pads on here clearly hadn't seen much use. One bad thing we found was that the caliper on this side was somewhat seized. With a bit of pressure applied to the brake pedal, it did seem to move thankfully. It should move a lot more freely when you apply pressure like we're doing here though. Next we tried bleeding the brakes a little, which did get the caliper moving once again. Time for some new rotors. With any luck, a new set of rotors and loosening up the calipers should make for a smoother ride at highway speeds. A brushing is recommended to smoothen off the mating surface that the rotors sit on. Wow, this really does look a whole lot better than the old one. The sliding pins are now sliding a lot easier than they did at the beginning of this video. And now we find out why one of the brake pad alignment pins was missing. The corner of this metal piece was blocking the hole, so we simply snipped it off so that the pin could fit through. And there we go, that's more like it. Now it's all set up and moving as it should be. But it's still not braking properly. Well, it is moving at the very least. So we bled the brake line, which should help. My father was now satisfied that the caliper was clamping down as it should. Now onto the other side. We hadn't actually checked this side yet, so fingers crossed it doesn't require much work. And would you look at that, this side is also missing the wire that holds the pins in place. And somehow they hadn't fallen out. These retaining screws aren't actually necessary now. As far as I'm aware, they're mainly used during assembly in the factory. Relievingly, they weren't rusted in place and did indeed come out. I'd still recommend putting these back in afterwards, even if they aren't essential. The previous owner apparently did a lot of their own maintenance to this car, which may explain the missing pin holders. And I was so lucky that both of them didn't fall out, and thankfully the caliper on this side did move normally when we pried on the rotor. This set of brake pads also has plenty of life left in them. The sliding pins also moved nice and freely, not locked up like they were on the driver's side. The bolts that held the calipers in place also loosened off easily. So far, so good for this side. Perhaps the other side was causing most of our issues. And when you take this off, be careful not to put too much strain on the brake line that's still attached. These cars are so simple, which is great for someone like me who has limited experience. Time for a brushing. Honestly, this wasn't too bad given the age of this car and the condition of the rest of it. Side by side, the new rotor looks great. Not that you'll see it much under the hubcaps, and very soon the surface will look more or less like the old one. But for now, let's bask in the shiny glory of this new part. You want the caliper bolts on here pretty tightly. Having the caliper fall off is less than ideal. Oh, good old Repco brake pads. Thankfully, they've still got plenty of life left in them. And I did get a few extra alignment pins from U-Pullet, just in case this side was also missing one. And with the metal wire holding them in place, it looks like everything is working as it should be. And after bleeding the brake line, the wheel can go back on. When cars sit for months or years, the brakes are usually the first thing to give you issues. And with a good slap, we were all done for the night. Thankfully, it all went well as I needed the car to drive back to my house. Can the apparent exhaust leak be easily fixed? It could simply be a gasket issue. To find out, I'll have to once again remove the air intake hose. I do love just how easy this is to work on. Next to come off is the heat shield, held on with 3 bolts which thankfully weren't seized in place. This metal can be quite sharp, and in hindsight, I would also strongly recommend wearing gloves. A lot of small bolts hold the exhaust manifold to the engine block. Hang on, the first bolt I tried wasn't even tight. It turned out that most of them were quite loose, which would make sense as you'd only hear and smell the exhaust leak when the metal was cold. Once expanded and warmed up, it would seemingly go away. From a cold start, the smell of fumes was all but eliminated. It also sounded much better when accelerating. Problem solved. Next problem, the lack of window tint. I figured I'd simply tint the front windows, making sure they were clean. I then measured the size before cutting some automotive window tint. I bought the cheapest one I could find at Bunnings, which in hindsight was a huge mistake. There were creases along the entire roll, which is not ideal, and I'm pretty sure this is not supposed to be like this. The reviews online said that this tint was incredibly thin and prone to creasing. I agree, and it ended up looking quite average to say the least. But that's why I started with the passenger side. Since it wouldn't really matter what it looks like, I just want less sunlight getting in. Using the first window cutout as a guide for the next window was helpful. What wasn't helpful was how easily the material bunched up and stuck to itself as I tried to apply it to the window. I had to cut another piece. This time I actually left the protective backing on the tint. Yes, that meant I likely wouldn't be able to wind the window down, but that's fine by me. To help with sun glare, I also put a small strip on the front window. As long as it's under 10% of the overall height, I'm pretty sure it's legal. Ah, what a lovely car. What more could you possibly want? It's sleek, stylish, and very aerodynamic, with so much practicality thanks to it being a hatchback. There's really something to like about a car that you don't have to care about. Trust me, I wouldn't be sliding down the bonnet of a car that I really cared about. Oh, who am I kidding? Of course I care about this car. I appreciate it for what it is. It's a cheap little runaround A to B car which can fit into the smallest of parking spaces. And given the hard life it's been through, I'm impressed just how good the paint still is. And I'm not sure if it's due to it being painted white, but I barely see older cars with white paint having issues. The harsh Australian sun is very much not kind to paint, especially if a car were to sit outside for most of its life. For being such a good car, I think it deserves some random stuff off of Temu. And when I first bought this random handbrake cover, I thought it looked a bit too big, but honestly, it's a great fit. Are these knockoff air fresheners? We will soon find out, I think. They definitely smell good, and hopefully they aren't going to be dangerous to breathe in. Leaving these in their original packets with a slight tear will definitely make them last longer. Time for some novelty floor mats. These are honestly quite terrible. While hilarious, they are clearly AI upscaled and are pretty thin. This car's next purpose was to take me to another car that I was buying, so I left it for a while parked very far away. You'll see the new car I bought in a future video. Trust me, it's a weird one. To go and get the Festiva, which had been sitting on a random industrial street in Lonsdale, I had to catch 2 different trains, which made for quite a bit of an adventure. After travelling to the city on the Gawler line, I hopped over to the Seaford line train, which took me all the way down to Lonsdale, south of Adelaide. The train was without a doubt the best way to get here, but it still involved a decent walk. I was lucky that the rain forecast for the day hadn't hit, and there were no real footpaths to get there, since this was primarily an industrial area. Thankfully, the car was actually still there, with no signs of vandalism, and I was sure to check the fluid levels before starting the car. The brakes felt a bit weird on the drive to collect my new car, and at least the fluid is all still there, and I did bring a jumper battery, but relievingly, I didn't need it. It's got that genuine old school Nugget reliability. It also survived the very long drive home. Heck, I forgot how bad South Road traffic is in the mid-afternoon. But it was smooth sailing once I was back on the Northern Expressway. Would I recommend buying one of these cars though? Look, there are actually quite a lot of downsides. They have very little power, especially the 1.3 litre B3 engine paired with the 3-speed automatic transmission. And given how small the car is, it's not that good on fuel. And forget about any safety features, this one has no airbags or even ABS. So for a learner driver, it's not a good option. If you make a mistake out on the road, it could be very, very costly. It's also likely that most of the cheaper ones for sale are quite worn out. Investing money into one of these doesn't make a lot of sense. That being said, they can be quite reliable if regular maintenance had been carried out. This one was somewhat neglected when I bought it. See the first video to find out more. I'm used to driving this and love how well the heaters and aircon work. The window tint, even though I didn't do a great job, makes a huge difference when driving during the day. Sadly, it's just not that fun of a car to drive. The lack of power steering does make it feel like you're driving a race car. A very slow one, and I think it's time for me to move this on. It's been a great little car, but I've got another weird car to replace it with. Look out for that in a video sometime soon.
So honestly, I'd had my fun with the car and sold it to a guy here in Adelaide for $800. He planned to use it to get to work and back in. And of course, something had to go wrong, of course, shortly after I sold it. And I just said, look, have half your money back, because he showed me the quote for what it would cost to get the rear drum brakes fixed. Apparently they were started seizing up or something. I don't think I'd had that happen at all when I owned the car. So anyway, I gave him half his money back, because honestly, I just wanted it to go to someone who could actually use it. And I hope it's a reliable little car for him in the future. If you're watching this, hello, and enjoy the car. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.